Welcome to another episode of Collective Conversation. I'm your host, Mike Brewer, and today I have Tim Ray, the co-founder and CEO of Verifast, an end-to-end verification platform serving the multifamily space. Tim, welcome to the show.
Hey, Mike. Thanks for having me. Nice to see you.
Nice to see you, and I understand it is incredibly cold in Canada, or at least the season of cold in Canada. Is that right?
Yeah, you know what? I think Mother Nature is throwing us a curveball where like hot and cold. One week we're like minus 20 Celsius. Next week we're kind of plus 10. So this week we're warm again. So I'll take it. But yeah, not as nice as Atlanta, that's for sure.
But don't put the parka away just yet, right?
Yeah, exactly. I still wear my Canada Goose because you never know. Sometimes you get surprised on my walk home. So
Makes sense. Makes sense. Well, Tim, I really appreciate you investing a little bit of time with us here today. I know verification, at least from my perspective, is a hot topic in the multifamily space, and we'll get into all the reasons why. But kind of give us, from your perspective, the state of the union as it relates to verification in the multifamily space.
yeah, I mean, when you think about, my view is when you think about like multifamily, probably the most profitable task in property management, either third party or owner operator, is tenant selection, right? Making sure you get good quality tenants, right? And so as far as like where we come in terms of verifying, in the tenant screening process, making sure that you have really efficient but also very accurate and good quality tenant screening is I would say that it's probably the most make it or break it for a property management or multifamily company. And traditionally up until recently, it's been driven by credit checks and background checks, right? Or what's your credit score? And do you have a criminal background? And all the other parts with regards to verifying somebody like they are who they say they are with an ID check. Typically, it's been just like a photocopy or of a driver's license, and a PDF of their pay stubs, maybe calling their employer manually, giving you maybe a bank statement that you have to like look at, manually, and like looking at all these transactions, you have no idea what they are. So it's all been really like manual tasks up until recently. And what we've seen over the last 5, 6, 7 years with the advent of like PDF editors are so easy to use. We've seen more sophistication around like ID fraud, and in combination with the recent really explosion in the increase of rent prices and cost of living and inflation, there's more now of a motivation for people to fudge documents, and with combination of technology making it extremely easy to do fraud, and this cost of living increases, inflation with people need now to do fraud or fraud for shelter. You're seeing this correlation where now like multifamily owners and operators that are kind of laggards in terms of technology adoption are really getting burned. We recently had a client that we signed, last year. At one point, their collection bad debt was like 13%, double the industry average. We brought them down to zero net new collections. After they instituted Verifast, and really it's just like people. We all, I think at the property level too, you take someone for a tour and you see them and you talk to them. We always get our emotions mixed in, and we have like empathy for people. And some people are really good talkers in person, and so you rent to them. And then eventually, and they're really good for a reason because they're doing this professionally, right? And so eventually you get burned. So what we're seeing overall is that there's a really big need to make sure that we digitally verify people's identity, income, and employment directly from the source. And so that's why Verifast exists, is that we've really come in to replace that last sector of the tenant screening process that's been done manually today, to make sure it's like done in a more automated and sophisticated fashion that keeps out fraud, and obviously just allows multifamily to select better tenants.
I appreciate you unpacking that. I smiled and I cringed and several other emotions coming out of my face. I've been in this business for a long time, like 30 years. And if you can imagine 30 years ago how we were verifying residents, and sometimes it was just like looking at the application. I don't know if we did income verification back in the day. We definitely took a copy of the driver's license, and believe it or not, put that photocopy right in the file, which was paper and in a filing cabinet. So it was
Yeah.
it's very archaic. But it did bring to mind, like, what got you excited about verifying prospects? Or I know you also serve the mortgage industry, I believe. But
Yeah.
so I'm just curious, like, did you wake up one day and go, that seems like an interesting space? It's kind of, what is your origin story for bringing Verifast
Uh,
to market?
it's a really good question. I mean, the origin story for Verifast is actually we were founded by the original idea founders for Verifast were my two co-founders, Chad and Craig. Craig is my very talented and favorite CTO that I've had to date. Really talented guy. He's actually originally like a BCom student that is like self-taught technologist. So he actually brings a really unique skill set in being able to like understand business problems and not having that classic divide of tech people can't talk to business people. He's really that like natural bridge between the two. And Chad, who he's our operations COO in the company. And the original thing is that Chad's dad was actually one of my first mentors and was on, this Verifast is my fourth company. I've had a few exits to date, been very lucky to be, unemployable and entrepreneur for the past 12 plus years. And, I've been very lucky in that regard. And, back in 2020, Chad's dad was like, I want you to meet my son and tell me if you think his idea is any good or not. Right. And so I met Chad and he's like, tell me about this idea that now we can use open banking to connect people's bank account directly to verify people's rent based on or income by seeing their actual income in their bank account and that they paid rent before by seeing the deposits or withdrawals come from their bank account. I was like, thought for a second, that silent pause, and then I got that, that classic entrepreneurial like eureka moment. Is like, holy, holy F, this is so obvious and so simple. It's genius. I need to be a part of this. And so I actually came in as originally the lead investor in our pre-seed round. But then as you get that adrenaline junkie, kind of like, oh man, this is huge. I need to be part of this. And I was in my third startup that was really kind of, my first two startups, I really lucky, had nice exits. My third one that I was doing at the time was a private aviation tech startup called Chirp. We're really flailing, trying to find a good product market fit. And I was just like, man, this is like such a better idea and it's solving real world pain. And the backstory too is that I was actually a landlord. I had a few rental properties in Windsor, which is across the border from Detroit. And I kind of joke around like being a landlord in Windsor is like kind of being a part-time social worker because you're dealing with like a pretty low common denominator type crowd. So I got burned a lot as a landlord. And so when I heard this problem is just kind of like all kind of the dots connected, and I was like, man, this is amazing. So that's kind of the origination story. And it took me another year for me to wrap up Chirp, which was my private tech aviation startup, and then come in full time with Verifast to take over the CEO role in basically fall of 2021. And it's been off to the races ever since. And I've had a lot of different co-founders over the years, and I got to say that this is definitely the best fit I've had to date.
Okay, so I want to key off something that you said there, open banking. And this is something that is, I think, widely adopted offshore United States, and it's getting adopted in the United States. But can you, just for our listeners and our viewers, can you unpack what that means? Because I don't think everybody knows exactly what that means.
Yeah, open banking is just it's an industry term. It's becoming regulated by the federal government, and it's basically a way for people to share their bank data directly from their bank account. Right? It's just we're using your banking card and your password to give somebody access to specific data that you're giving permission to directly from your bank account instead of having to download your bank statement from your bank account, put it into a PDF, and email it, which is unsecure, to another source. So if you think about it, we're already sharing our bank data today. Anytime that you have to apply for a lease or a loan or any sort of like underwriting or screening process today, we're already sharing our bank data. What open banking does is allows us to share it directly from the source. And when you think about it logically, that makes the most sense because when an underwriter or a leasing agent first gets a bank statement today, the first thing they do is not to look at the income. The first thing they do is to see, is this even a real bank statement?
Right.
right? And so we're actually wasting energy and reps on validating just the document itself versus the data and using the data right out of the gate, right? And if you think about the fact that anyone's 10-year-old kid can go online with Adobe and change a 3 to a 1 on an editor, and I'm sure many of them are. The idea of being able to use a PDF as proof of anything is like me walking into like the store and trying to buy something with Monopoly money, right? It's like it doesn't mean anything. It's like it's such a bad idea to be accepting validating people's income or employment based on PDF documents that it's like when 10 years ago you used to be able to drive down the highway and watch Netflix and it was like totally like legal.
Yeah,
Neither of those things are a good idea. You know what I mean?
that's right. That's right. I wonder because it's look, it seems logical to me. I imagine that there are consumers that are resistant to that, and I can carry that logic forward. And if they're resistant to it, they're probably bad actors anyway. But how do you get consumers comfortable with the idea of sharing in this way? I know it's caught on like wildfire overseas, but it seems like uh, it hasn't caught on so fast here. But what has been the resistance thus far?
Um, yeah, really good question. It's actually so it's a great question because when we first started back in, when Chad and Craig first started, the first question we were trying to answer in like 2020 was, would people even do this? Would people even like share their bank data directly from the bank account? Right.
Right.
And so, we had to solve that problem or answer that question first. And the truth is that, the majority of people, and it's dependent on market too, like urban versus rural. So there's a much higher correlation of people being able to share their data, urban markets versus rural markets, and also has a demographic market of like young versus old, right?
Mm.
And so I think a lot of people that are sub 40, it's just like, they're doing Robinhood. Anyone's ever signed up for like a wealth app and they've connected their bank accounts to their wealth app, it's the exact same thing. It's just they're doing it to verify their income instead, right? Um, Secondly is so for us at Verifast, the thing that we really wanted to solve for, which is unique to us, is you know where that user interface of that request for someone to connect their bank account pops up, and to build the trust is really important. And so what we did was we actually made it very open for all applicants to be able to rate their experience using Verifast on Trustpilot. So Verifast is actually the only tenant screening platform and income verification platform that actually has, literally like hundreds of 5-star reviews on Trustpilot. Listen, there's a bunch of people that are like what you mentioned, Mike, that are like 1-star, like, fuck you, I hate this. Sharing my data, it's intrusive, right? There's a bunch of those, but we're, 4 stars on Trustpilot, which, you can imagine in multifamily, it's tough for even property management companies to get, above a 3-star, on a Trustpilot, right? So, and we're actually asking them to share their most like private and vulnerable data, right? And so that actually helps with like a bit of like the feedback loop of like, oh, people see that, there's hundreds of reviews and it's a 4-star rating. Therefore, we are actually able to get more people to want to share their data with us because, we've socially normalized it for them. But, we're not there yet in terms of like everyone doing it. And so that's why we've also done, digital connect. And originally we were like digital connect only bank account connect or payroll software connect. Last year we introduced, we're now doing our own in-house document processing. So we're doing what's called OCR, which means optical character recognition. We're scanning the documents and turning that PDF into data. And then we're also doing fraud detection software on the PDF itself because, I think 10 years from now, maybe even like 5, 7 years from now, the idea of like sharing PDFs will be like, it will all like laugh about that we used to do that, right? And it will be all direct source data, but we're not there yet. And so PDFs and OCR is kind of like the bridge between today and tomorrow. And so now we are like that full solution that no matter whether you're like a end of lifer that, no matter what, you don't want to share your data, we'll take your PDF and we'll like, fraud detect it. And the good thing is that, fraud detection on bank statements has a really high efficacy. It's really tough because we can see the metadata and the structure, and there's not an infinite amount of sources for bank teams to come from, so we can really tell if bank teams been manipulated or not. Pay stubs, unfortunately, it's like a leaky boat. It's impossible to keep fraud out if you're just doing pay stub fraud detection and analysis, because you have everything from um, Joe's Plumbing that's using an off-the-shelf pay stub software that you can't tell if it's real or not, because it's just like he could use Word, Microsoft Word, right? To more sophisticated fraud that you have like actual organized crime where they're giving you real ADP pay stubs from like fake shell companies, right? And it's a whole ring, and so it's impossible to plug that hole. What we do is we actually do what we call bank verified pay stubs, where we actually match the dates and the net amounts and pay stub to the bank account or whatever Chime or Cash App they're using, so that way we can make sure that they're still coming from like a high fidelity source.
So I want to key in on something specific that you said, or at least this is a story I'm telling myself. So you get direct connect to the bank, and then you pull data into your, let's call it an algorithm or a workflow or whatever that you're using to produce hey, this is good or this is not good. What are you doing a look back in terms of someone's behavior in their bank account to do some probability exercises on a go for it, probably good or probably bad? How does that work?
So we do, but it depends on the client. Some clients literally just want to stick to like the 3-to-1 like income to rent ratio,
Understood.
and we're just doing a look back to just show them what they want, right? We're going to meet our clients where they're at, right?
Okay.
Some clients then also want to add in, oh, you can see NSFs. Oh, you can see like other certain things. So we'll add like, yes, we've seen 26 NSFs in this person's bank account over the last year. We also are adding in credit checks, but that's, we're just literally reselling a part that's nothing, net new. But on the bank data, I always am also curious, this 3-to-1 gross income to rent ratio is it's an old school ratio that it existed forever because nothing else better existed. It's not a very good metric for us to be using in general, right? What we should be looking at is, your total income. Great. But what's your actual like cash balances in your bank account? What is your actual like net cash flow? Net cash flow is king. It's like, are you already paying net rent today? Yes. Okay. $2,000 a month. I can see it coming in your bank account. You're applying for $3,000 a month in rent, right? Maybe with or without a rebate. But how does that impact your total cash flow, right? And of your existing expenses, how much of them are like core expenses and how much of them are discretionary spending? And so I think we're going to be going towards is what's more of like a financial behavior score, which we already have, which only a few of our clients are using, to really look at like what's the real-time financial health of that individual, and their ability to withstand like financial shock or adverse events in the future, right? But we have the ability to do that all today. I think the first step is just having people switch from PDFs to digital data, and then kind of like crawl, walk, run down this idea of predictive behavior based on like financial banking data.
Thank you for answering that. That's I was just having this conversation several days ago, and it that topic came up, so I was just curious to get your viewpoint on that. Talk to me about this too. Obviously in the multifamily space, you sign a lease, whatever, 6, 9, 12 months. That lease comes up for renewal. Many times we do not requalify an individual, but intra-lease or intra-mini leases, you have change in behavior, life events, you lose a job, you lose all this stuff. Is there the ability within your platform to sort of see ongoing behavior as it relates to someone's open banking status, I guess is the way to put that?
Yeah, so we have that ability, but we don't do it today. And so we have the ability with the consumer's permission. So the applicant has to give permission that they want to allow with like a persistent connection, where we would see their ongoing bank data. Today we do like a 12 months look back. We have the ability to, if somebody wants to say it and the applicant agrees to it, let's go ongoing with financial reporting. And you actually can make it where it's beneficial to both. Like we can actually do like rent reporting, build credit as part of that. It's always like a trade-off, right? The client wants to you want to get their data going forward, you have to give them something for it. And what is that, right? Maybe it's special offers tailored around their spending behavior. Maybe it's like rent reporting to build credit. Maybe it's something else. Yeah, so we definitely have that ability. It's not something that we're actively doing today, though.
Yeah, I was just curious about that. And I'm glad you unpacked incentives because you could somehow bake that in. Rent reporting is one thing, certainly sharing uh, opportunities with people that are in that sort of vicinity would be another. I I think there's something. Look, you can't do everything right with your platform, but there might be some interesting partnerships out there where you combine with other platforms to create something interesting. I want to, so prior to hitting the record button, you made the remark, and I believe this to be true. Atlanta, I think, leads the league. It's not a very prestigious thing to know or to have, but leads the league in fraud, right?
Yeah.
Kind of talk to me if you have stats to share, it'd be fantastic. But Verifast in the Atlanta market specifically, have you seen sort of a trending down of activity because we're using Verifast today versus potential competitors?
Yeah, I mean, Atlanta, Atlanta's probably like our one of our number one market now in terms of, at the I always joke around with, we have a really talented VP of sales, Jean Klein, and I always joke with her, it's like the multifamily mafia. It's like everyone's like connected and they refer, and it's a blessing and curse. If you're in the mafia, it's great. If you're not, so with John, we hired somebody that's 17 plus years multifamily experience. And she was the actual operator for like a long time doing like lease ups and stuff. And so we're at that point now, and we've proven ourselves in Atlanta, which is like the one of the worst markets possible. Also, not just multifamily, but we're really proud to be working with a lot of like large single family REITs, so Tricon Residential, Pure Property Management, where they have, not in addition to just like tenant fraud, but they also have the issue with like virtual showings of independent single family homes, where we have to really block out that fraud as well. And so, um, we get a lot of referrals now to other operators in Atlanta, because we are really like significantly impacting like bad debt and collections and keeping out fraudulent applicants. And every time we have a ping of like, here's a fraudulent applicant, they're like, oh, this is like great, we would have never caught this before, right? And you can imagine in Atlanta, I heard this, I don't know how true it is or not, you can tell me, but if you have somebody that comes in and squats and they're there for more than 5 days, the police won't get them out. Now you have to go through like a proper eviction process, and it can take up to a year to get somebody out of an apartment in Atlanta. And so if you were to look at like the average cost of rental, say like $2,000, plus the fixing and flipping, you're probably looking at $30,000, a $30,000 mistake for every single person that you let in that really wants to work the system, right?
That's right.
So yeah, I'm like, it's a no brainer. You can spend, $15, whatever it is, on proper identity and income and valid verification, or whatever, if you're multifamily, the SaaS cost it is to like save like one miss really throws off that whole building, right?
That's right. That's right. You just brought to mind, it wasn't anything to do with anything you just said, except I don't know, it just popped in my head. One of the things we found on the front side, um, Verifast, I like the name. Sometimes the verification was not fast, and fast defined by today's consumer, right? I can go to Amazon and I can click a button and have something on my doorstep, and that's we're trained to get information very fast, but it is a process to go through getting verified to either get in to a building to see something and or to get an application approved. What is the typical turnaround time for Verifast? If I put in an application, how quickly do I get approved with your system?
Uh, so our service is like under 4 hours. If you're doing a report between like 7 to 7, like we're gonna do that within with under 4 hours. So there's qualify. If they're doing a digital connect, it's instant. If they're doing an OCR turnaround, and we have an actual human in the loop team that so we have AI that reads the documents, does all the OCR. OCR is the AI OCR is not 100% where, it's like instant, it's always accurate. You always need, again, a series of checks and balances to make sure that the document is correct. And so we have a human loop team that does that. And so we're looking at anywhere from like instant to, maximum of like 4 hours to get, um, a document turned around or an app getting turned around. Yeah.
And so I'm curious on the consumer side, because our experience also is that it wasn't necessarily our team and or your team, it was the consumer not moving swiftly enough. Are there sort of pings in your system that, hey, you still need to do this, you still need to do that, or forcing functions that make that kind of stuff happen or I guess more quickly?
Yeah, it's common workflow. You'll have someone that comes in, they do their like ID verification, that biometric like based ID selfie. They'll come in, they'll connect their bank account, and then also they get to the next step and they don't maybe have their pay stub, or they don't have like whatever, they have to go to work, or they have to like during in the morning, they have to wait, and they'll come back later in the day to upload their pay stubs. And so we have those those SMS and email notifications for them to come back. Or it's the the leasing agent that will look at the application that's incomplete and give them a nudge, whatnot, right? So it's all about not only them, and then it's also like the household view. Like it's like the primary applicant, but then they've added like 3 or 4 co-applicants to their lease, and maybe one of the kids hasn't done their thing yet, or the spouse hasn't done it yet. So there's all those extenuating circumstances, but really the thing with Verifast is we do really accelerate the amount of time it takes to complete the application, and to make sure that we like spot any like bad actors, and to give that holistic view of what is the total income picture, right, of all the applicants, and then if there is a guarantor or not, and then how do we like custom configure, and actually how do we configure the income for the risk tolerance of the manager, because sometimes they want to allow high fidelity gig work like Uber or Lyft or whatever, something that's recognizable like gig work. And sometimes they don't want to allow in like e-transfers like a Venmo or a Zelle or whatever, which is a common form of payment for like if you're like an influencer, or you're like you got side hustles, or like whatever that's the way we get paid. But maybe your building's in Atlanta or in California, and it's state law that you have to allow all deposits to be declared as income or not. And so the thing that we've done extremely well is, we have multiple banking aggregation partners that we work with, from Plaid, MX, Finicity. But it's that layering on top of that to look at what is the recurring nature of all these deposits, and within the risk profile of the operator, do they want to allow certain types of income to be declared as income, or put it into another category that we call as potential income, that they can then like move into income to help instantly change that ratio. And again, sometimes it depends on the weeks. Sometimes buildings, depending on how good or bad their leasing season is, maybe they want to be more lenient with certain forms of income or not, right? But yeah.
That's interesting. I want to take a little bit of a right turn here. You mentioned the word AI, or it's not really a word, but how do you, I'm just always interested in this because it's front and center today, how you use AI. You mentioned one in the last thing that you said, but are there other ways that you're using AI to sort of harness the data you have to use it to either inform yourself or to inform business owners of things that you can take advantage of?
Yeah, there's kind of 3 core ways that we're using AI today. One is on the OCR technology itself, so on us being able to like take PDF documents and ingest them. So actually using optical character recognition and certain templates to then be able to extract that data. So using the artificial intelligence to like recognize what a classified document is, it a pay stub, bank statement, 1099, W2, whatever it is, and then being able to extract the data. That's like one AI module onto itself. Using AI to look at fraud, from everything from the structure of that PDF to characters or fonts that have been edited, to the metadata, to if it's been taken with a picture and there's a background, let's say a table, and is this table popping up in other pictures that aren't even related to this applicant? Is this like a serial fraud type scenario, right? So we're using that to look at like one example versus many, right? A one-to-many type scenario. Then we're also using AI and more machine learning with regards to looking at how do we look at recurring nature of different types um, of deposits and income and with various descriptions, expenses, and then also looking at various weighted indicators of like income, NSFs, balances, what we call like a cash flow, financial behavior score, um, and then using that to like look at with different demographic groups, like whether it's age or geography, um, to see like how do we optimize that financial behavior score in the future, right? So we doing a lot of A/B testing. So it's AI is the future. We're still in like the second inning of AI in terms of where we're going. Still like early days, but I'm really excited about it helps with financial inclusion. We talk about the old school ways of people doing tenant screening and pay stubs. Well, we're seeing an incredible amount of like young people for the same reasons we said earlier, cost of living and whatnot. People need to have like sometimes 2, 3 jobs now just to make ends meet, and they're getting paid in ways that we're not used to seeing them get paid before. And so, us using bank data to verify income is important to make sure that we're verifying all income sources. And then, we see certain demographics where, again, they're doing more like maybe gray economy or, other types of like ad hoc jobs. And maybe they're using non-traditional financial institutions like a Cash App. And how do we make sure that those people that they count, right? And that all their income counts. And so that's why we talk about like, why do I get so excited about, Verifast and what we're doing? It's like, we're literally changing the way that businesses and people trust each other. We're actually like a trust company. And
Yeah.
I get really, we kind of combine purpose and profit. For me, that is like the utopia of like 10 out of 10, where I can actually say that Verifast is actually helping change the way that people do business and how we build instant trust. And for me, that's something I really get jazzed about because we're helping people, both companies to get lose less, and
Yeah.
people to get treated transparently and fairly up front, so that way they get a fair shake on the first pass.
I love that. I I love that. That's like a fantastic crescendo moment in this podcast. So thank you for sharing that. It 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 brought to mind, in terms of sort of that win-win. I imagine this also, from an operator's perspective, gives a win in the way of time saved. And the word centralization or efficiency comes to mind. This platform lends perfectly, at least in my opinion, to sort of a centralized effort, whereas you're traditionally doing a lot of this stuff site by site by site, but now you can pick a person or pick a department that can actually do this with your platform. Is that fair to say?
Yeah, 100%. I mean, obviously, Funnels, doing a really good job and famous for doing the whole centralization play within multifamily.
Right.
I think Verifast, the same thing with regards to tenant screening and underwriting is we allow for company to have a centralized team that can do all income verification and do it fast, because they're really efficient at what they do, and that's all that they do. That really layers in well for that type of a setup for sure.
Yeah, I know that's a big topic in the multifamily space today. It's interesting. I always think about it as a big topic today, but I worked for Equity Residential, like, let's say it was a long time ago. Let's just say a long time ago. And we were doing centralization like 15 years ago, taking the admin work out. We're doing it where we had properties that were in close proximity. So one assistant manager might do the work for 3 properties opposed. But so it's not necessarily a new topic, but it is one where technology, I think, is actually caught up to the concept. And so now you can facilitate centralization a lot more efficiently and effectively. I'm interested to know, what is something that I've not asked you that you think viewers and listeners would like to hear about?
It's a really good question. I wish I was prepared for that one. Uh,
I have to throw curveballs every now and then.
yeah, no, it's great. Um, you know, I think so. You know what? I think this space right now. You're starting to see where there's been this like wave of like PropTech startups like Verifast. I would say there's probably like a half a dozen companies, newer startups, let's say like 6 years or less, that are doing varying degrees of what we do, right? There's, whether they're doing bank or they're doing pay stubs like Snap, or they're doing just like Bank Connect, like PayScore, or they're doing, whatever they're doing. You have all these companies now that have popped to do this because the bigger PMSs, are kind of like slow to, lead the charge. You still have a lot of like major PMSs that still don't even have like, income verification using bank data built in, right? And, Verifast, luckily, we're not only dealing directly with property management companies and operators, but we're also, our API is like an embedded white label partner for other PropTechs. And so for us, we love, partnering with other industry players to help them do what they do better, right? So MRI Software, is one of our, proud partners. We power their income and employment verification underneath the hood as a white label solution for our HR. Aptly, another, lead to lease player, Sina Shaku, awesome guy. He was one of the original founders of PropTech that got by RealPage. Again, we're a partner of Apple's, again, powering their identity, income, and employment. And so where there's another PropTech where their core IP is like maybe process or communication automation or workflow management, we can really be a really nice plug-in to, to those partners to, take care of the data. We like eat and breathe data all day, right? And
Right.
so, we obsess about data and trust and all the edge cases. So I think it's the biggest thing. If what we're saying, sounds like something that they need. We also work with them directly, but also love to work with them through their existing tech stack.
So thank you. You just brought to mind, I'm interested your perspective on sort of the state of affairs in the prop tech space. I imagine that the business climate has obviously changed. The economic climate, broadly, macros changed a lot. That's impacted the multifamily space and all real estate asset types. I imagine that it's also impacted prop tech in some way, shape, or form. I'm interested in your perspective if you're willing to share.
Yeah, well, I think overall investment climate has changed. You went from, probably if you're a startup looking at like 10 to 20x your, your like last 12 months run rate on a raise, and now you're probably looking at like 6, 8, maybe 10x if you're lucky on your, on your ARR. So that's where I think startups now, I think previously, they would get addicted to the VC cash, and it was like growth at all costs and growing revenue, not really looking at unit economics. And I think what we've seen now, and luckily, we've been very tight with regards to like raising capital and very prudent with regards to taking on new cash and who we've had invest, making sure that they're strategic. Either they're able to be a client ourselves, or they can introduce us to clients, right? That's really how we've made our vetting decision, because we don't want to bring on any dumb capital. Not to, money is money, but at the end of the day, I'd rather have smart money than dumb money. So
Yeah, makes sense.
I think that's the biggest learning curve right now. I think is people that raised a bunch of money pre 2021, when valuations were really frothy, are probably having, and they're maybe burning a lot of cash because their unit economics aren't good. They're gonna have a tough time surviving once that cash runs out without doing a crazy down round, which obviously really hurts the founders, because then they get really diluted.
Yeah, that makes sense. I was at PropTech last fall. I can't remember the month, but it seemed like the energy in the room was awesome from the perspective that there were a lot of solutions in the room. There was a lot of youth in the room, just smart young people working on big problems in multifamily, which was really inspiring for someone like me who's been around for a long time. But then there was also this sort of undercurrent of, we've got to change our strategy here, to all the
Mm.
points that you just made, because it's
I mean, case in point, like just to cut in there. So we've luckily signed a half a dozen brand new project partners since the beginning of the year. It's been, a really like, we're only 3+ years into the game that we really hit stride, and now we're becoming more of a household name, and people are coming to us because they don't want to build it themselves. They want to a turnkey solution. But we had one of the projects that we signed, in January. We were excited about them. Really great guys. And then, they were getting close to finishing their integration and launching, and then we got an email last week that they're already going bankrupt.
Oh
Um,
no.
and you hate to see that because like these young startups, they're so eager and they're doing great stuff, and then the funding that they think they are supposed to get falls through, right? I mean, they hit that brick wall. So I can see the collateral damage firsthand because we're working with a lot of these startups in partnership. Obviously, we want them all to do well, but not everyone's going to survive.
Yeah, that's right. It brings to mind what would you say to some, just to kind of bring our time here to a close. I'm interested in what you might say to someone in that very scenario, somebody who's built 4 successful companies or 3 successful, and this one is well on its way to being very successful. What would you say to that guy who it didn't quite work out? What kind of advice would you give to that person?
Oh, yeah. I mean, you know what? I gotta say, my first 2 startups were very lucky, successful. My third one was a big swing and a miss, and this is my fourth one. So uh, I'm definitely not batting 1,000. I say now to people, if you're batting 1,000, you're not swinging hard enough. And
Oh,
so
nice.
I say, if you swung and you missed, at least you didn't. At least you're not the guy that says coulda, shoulda, woulda. You know what I mean? I grew up with a lot of people that were like coulda, shoulda, woulda type people, and they end up growing old and getting regretful because they didn't have the owners to do it. And so they should be really proud that they actually like attempted and did try to do something big. And whether they failed or not doesn't really matter because it's going to give them some scars. It'll give them a better perspective on the second time around of what not to do or what to do better. And so that's just part of like the school of entrepreneurship is we all have failures, and failures are how we learn the most, right? So I
That's
think
right.
that's the biggest thing is like very encouraging of people to swing hard and miss, and swing again after that.
I love it. I appreciate you sharing that, and I'm sure the viewers and listeners will as well. Tim, I really appreciate you investing time with uh, us here at Multifamily Collective in this collective conversation. And I want to give you an opportunity to share where people might find out more about Verifast and or you specifically or somebody in your organization that might be helpful to them.
Yeah, I mean, any other PropTechs or anyone in the space that wants to reach out, you can find me easily at LinkedIn, or you can reach me on email, tim.ray@verifast.com, or you can check out our website at verifast.com.
Awesome. Thank you, Tim. For everybody else, we'll see you next time on Collective Conversations.
Thanks, Mike. Appreciate it, buddy.